Are you familiar with FBI Special Agents Kyle Seraphin?
I'm familiar with the name.
Is that yes?
I'm familiar with the name. Familiar with the name. Familiar with the name.
Let's bring in Kyle Seraphin. He's the FBI whistleblower who helped expose government censorship of our First Amendment rights.
Now, we only have this memo because a recently suspended FBI agent called Kyle Seraphin brought it to the public. And we're grateful that he did. Kyle, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
He's the host of something that strangely is called the Kyle Seraphin Show.
Kyle Seraphin, I can't thank you enough for speaking out. I knew you guys were out there, and I knew it was just a matter of time, but you got a lot of guts putting your face and your name to this. You're doing a service on behalf of the American people, and from the bottom of my cracked and broken heart sometimes, thank you very much.
Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Well, hello, my friends. Welcome to the Kyle Seraphin Show. It is Tuesday. It is January the 21st, and we are in the first new day of the Trump administration here in 2025, and we're already getting off to an absolute roller coaster ride for our friends on the left. And what I did today is something I don't do every day. I went out and found the best of the top headlines because I want you to know what some of your neighbors are reading for news today. And it is really, really funny, the things they chose to cover, the way that they chose to cover it, and the things that they chose not to cover, which is pretty significant. Let's start a little differently. Oftentimes what we do is go directly into a sponsor read, and we get us going. I'm actually going to get us started with kind of a warm-up moment. This is J.D. Vance, the new Vice President of the United States, swearing in with his cute little 3-year-old, who's got her fingertips covered in band-aids, as 3-year-olds are wont to do. Let's get started off with a little bit of a warm-up swear-in from yesterday's inauguration.
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, James David Vance, do solemnly swear.
I, James David Vance, do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States.
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
Against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
That I will bear true faith
that I will bear true faith
and allegiance to the same.
and allegiance to the same,
That I take this obligation freely,
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion.
or purpose of evasion,
And that I will well and faithfully discharge
and that I will well and faithfully discharge
the duties of the office
the duties of the office
on which I am about to enter.
on which I am about to enter.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. Vice President.
All right, that's a little start. It's a little bit of a taste. And again, it's kind of refreshing to see somebody who's got little children, who's got some skin in the game, instead of that childless cat lady, Kamala Harris, and the guy who had a crack addict kid. That's a little bit of a different change here. What a difference one day makes. We're going to go ahead and launch into a thank you to our friends over at Blackout Coffee, because they are sponsoring the program, and I am rip-roaring right now, 100% full speed. So let's just go with it. Folks, we got to tell you about the latest release from Blackout Coffee. There are times when you don't have time to make a pot. You're in the studio all day long like I am. You're sitting at your desk. You need a boost. Well, Blackout Coffee recently introduced a brand new ready-to-drink version. Comes in 2 different flavors. It's a cold brew latte or a cold brew berry latte. Both of these are the same 100% specialty grade Arabic coffee that can last on the shelf for up to a year. There's a 100% commitment to conservative values, sourcing the beans, roasting process, the customer support, and the shipping. It embodies true American values, except no compromise when it comes to taste or to quality. Folks, you guys are the ones who actually turned me on to Blackout Coffee. You may know this, but our listenership were the ones that said, hey, Kyle, we want to send you a bag, so we really appreciate that. They're a family-owned company. If you don't have this in your fridge, you got to go ahead and check yourself out. If this is something you need to have in your hopper for an emergency amount of caffeine, maybe you got kids like we do and you just don't always have that time, you can go to blackoutcoffee.com/Kyle. Again, it is blackoutcoffee.com/Kyle. The promo code KYLE will save you 20% off that first order. Again, blackoutcoffee.com/Kyle. You can be awake and not be woke. That is Blackout Coffee. We appreciate them as a sponsor, so make sure you guys are supporting our sponsors. Let's dive into this because we got a lot of ground to cover today. Man, I had so much fun pulling together today's show. I really did. There's nothing funnier than opening up my CNN. You guys know I start the day with CNN because CNN doesn't tell us the truth. And I want to know what the lie of the day is. And the lie of the day is, they just can't let it go. It's like the good old days. They led off with a fact check. It is the first story on the top of the page. They have an entire thing up there. Fact check. I pulled it. Trump made more than 20 false claims in his Inauguration Day remarks. Do you know how many fact checks I have seen of Joe Biden in the last 4 years? He gave a couple of speeches, not very many, mind you. Most of the time he was in bed by 4 and he probably didn't get up till 10 a.m. But do you know how many fact checks I saw? 0, none, zilch. It never led the news, not once. We've been doing this podcast for a little over 2 years right now. I check CNN religiously. I check them throughout the day and I check them first thing in the morning. I always know what their first story is. It has never once been fact check. Joe Biden lied to you X number of times during a speech he just made. Not one time. So for our lib friends out there and those on the left that just want to see winning, this is what winning looks like. This is why your fact check will continue to give us the same thing. Here's Donald Trump swearing in as President of the United States of America. Yeah, we're going to do 2 full oaths. Why? Because the oath is actually really important to people at this show. The Suspendables crew think this oath means something. And then we're going to get into some of the promises made, the promises kept that he did on day one. Let me just take a deep breath here. Check this.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Chief Justice Roberts to administer the presidential oath of office.
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear.
I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear.
That I will faithfully execute.
That I will faithfully execute.
The office of President of the United States.
The office of President of the United States.
And will, to the best of my ability.
And will, to the best of my ability.
Preserve, protect, and defend.
Preserve, protect, and defend.
The Constitution of the United States.
The Constitution of the United States.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. President.
And there it is. So you get a little taste. And John Roberts was in a hurry. He didn't wait for the family to get behind him or anything. He just said, let's do this right now. In fact, it happened so quickly that Donald Trump did not get his hand on the Bible, which was being carried by Melania. So that is, I kid you not, one of the lead stories from ABC News under their politics section. I'm not even going to read you the fact check because I just don't care. I just think it's funny that they called out that the opening line was fact check. And some of the things are classic Trump, and some of them are classic, like sort of Trump exaggerations and things that he says, and some of them are going to be the lacks context. Bleh. Trump doesn't place his hand on Bible during swear-in. Chief Justice John Roberts administered the oath of office. Now, to the everlasting credit of ABC News, both of those are true statements. He did not place his hand on the Bible when he swore in, and John Roberts was the one who administered the oath. So we'll fact check them and say that's true. Why that was one of your lead stories in the politics section? Nobody knows. It kind of seems like they're trying to say something about whether or not he's a good person, whether or not he's violated protocol, whether or not he has put his hand on the Bible should upset people who read the Bible. Do we think that members of the ABC staff are constantly reading the Bible and are very, very offended on behalf of Christians? I don't. And the reason I don't is because I read the rest of their stories, which are also really funny. And we're going to get to those in a little bit. Now, in fairness to ABC, ABC probably did the most fair coverage of some of this on the top lines in the written form. So good for ABC. They get the award of actually attempting to do journalism with a capital J and not trying to do something else, whatever else it is, propaganda. But you can't make it up. Who's the most ridiculous group here? Who are the people that we pay for? You guys in the chat already know the answer. We pay for them, at least in some part. They are also paid for by the elitist leftists, and they have constantly the most un-American messaging of any quote-unquote news source. You guys want to take a quick guess? I'll give the chat just a moment to take a look. There we go. We'll put the X chat up. We'll put the Rumble chat up. Guys, while we're talking about it, you can follow us over at rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. You can follow us on X. It's at Kyle Seraphin. That's the handle if you're not doing so already. I'm looking for who is the most un-American news source that is out there, and we're going to keep watching. Again, and if you want to make sure that you join our locals channel, very easy to do. You simply do so by going to kyleseraphin.com. The chat is striking out at the moment. MSNBC would normally be the right answer, except we fund them. Here's NPR's headline. I kid you not, this was the top story at NPR. The top story. The number one story. Donald Trump declares U.S. will withdraw from the World Health Organization. Why would anybody at NPR, funded by the American tax dollars and donations and listeners like you, why would they care so much about the propaganda pieces that they are supposed to run on behalf of the WHO? I've seen a couple of really fun little pieces from interviews of folks that work at the WHO. They simply are owned by Chinese propaganda outlets. Like, that's all they do is they pump out nonsense. It's fairly incredible. I want you guys to have a little taste of what he did. This is one of 196 or 198 executive orders for the record. And the actual record, as we talked about the other day, the 42 executive orders signed by Joe Biden were the highest number signed since Truman in the first 100 days. Donald Trump did almost 4x that yesterday. Is that a good way to rule? Absolutely not. Is that what happens when you open up the door for tit for tat politics? It is. And here's the president getting rid of the World Health Organization on the U.S. budget. He's saying we are no longer going to be part of it. He also withdrew from the Paris Climate Accords, like moment one. And he also demanded that federal employees should come back to work. There are so many executive orders. We're going to be piecing through them probably for a week or two. Again, almost 200 of them in the first day. And he spent the first part of the day getting driven up to, because he didn't get sworn in until afternoon. Then he had a huge inauguration parade and speeches and ceremonies and so on. It was a wild day in Washington, D.C. for people who were paying attention. And then they still partied their butts off all night. Here it is.
Withdrawing from
What is this one?
Withdrawing from the World Health Organization, sir.
Ooh, that's a big one. So we paid $500 million to World Health when I was here, and I terminated it. China, with 1.4 billion people, we have 350 to pay. We have, nobody knows what we have because so many people came in illegally, but let's say we have 325. They had 1.4 billion. They were paying 39 million, we were paying 500 million. It seemed a little unfair to me. So that wasn't the reason, but I dropped out. They offered me to come back for 39 million. In theory, it should be less than that, but you know. And when Biden came back, they came back for 500 million. He knew that you could have come back for 39 million. They wanted us back so badly, so we'll see what happens. I would do it, yeah. I would do it.
Talking about the
He's just playing games with these idiots. And he's like, yeah, we walked out. They came back to the table and offered us a lower dollar amount. And yeah, these people are evil. The things that they have done is cover up Chinese malfeasance. It's pretty clear. We know that. I'm just fascinated that NPR thought that this was the number one story. They didn't even lead with, like, new president in the United States of America, Donald Trump sworn in. Like, everybody else had some variety of it. CNN led with, here's a bunch of lies he told you in his speech. Amazing. This, and then, as I said, ABC kicking in with sort of like a somewhat reasonable thing, saying he got sworn in, but he didn't put his hand on the Bible. It's very comical to see this sort of meta coverage. CBS, top story, no joke. It's the top story for a lot of us. Well done, CBS. They don't seem particularly happy about it, but I think we're thrilled. 1,500 pardons for the J6ers. And that's what this January has been dedicated to over at this show. It's the reason why I interviewed Steve Baker, why we interviewed JD Rivera, why we had Sean Witzman on the Sunday conversation that you guys can listen to. It's the featured story over on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. So if you haven't heard it, it's my pinned post over on X. If you guys want to check it out over there, I appreciate it. He still feels a lot of the pain. I talked to Sean a little bit earlier. There is something to be said about individually calling people out. What Trump did was much wilder. He went full bore and he unleashed all of them, minus a handful that are going to be dealing with some commutations, which is to say they've been let out of their prison sentence, but they were not pardoned for the crimes that they were convicted of. And they're still doing apparently some research on that. He explains that. Let me just put it this way. He sat in the Oval Office and did an hour-and-a-half long press conference, and the stack of EOs in front of him is tremendous. Again, almost 200 of them. There are a few people that have been left out of this, and it's worth noting. The story of Jeremy Brown is incredibly troubling if you followed it. He was originally, he was a Green Beret, right? So he served our country, honorable discharge, was living down in Florida, was approached by members of either DHS or something on the Joint Terrorism Task Force. And then when they finally executed some attempts to jam him up because he went to January 6th, they ended up arresting him on like explosive munitions or some sort of pyrotechnics that were found in his house, which he claims were not there. At this point, I wouldn't rule out anything, even though I've never seen anybody plant evidence. I just don't feel good about it. So the story of Jeremy Brown needs to be followed up on. At the very minimum, it seems like he needs to have a commutation as well. He was not listed in the January 6th things because the circumstances of his story are substantially different than the average person who was charged with either like sedition or, the parading, the trespassing type charges. So all of these things need to be looked at, and I would love to see, we're going to continue to push these stories as best we can. Like, I'm a small outlet, but we want to magnify the cry of those that have been treated poorly. Here's Donald Trump talking about the hostages. Should every J6er be considered a hostage? No. Should they all be let out? I think the argument was made multiple times by several of our friends saying, at this point, everybody has served more than enough time. And the only person that should really feel terrible about these pardons, by the way, it's Merrick Garland and Chris Wray, two people that abuse the American taxpayers' confidence and their funding to go after political enemies that should have never even made it on the docket. This should have been done in the D.C. Superior Court. It should have been investigated maybe by the D.C. Metro PD, and then probably dismissed because they were not serious enough crimes. Instead, they made this into a full-blown 3-squad exposition. My friends are still getting J6 leads, which is to say, please investigate this person. There's one other question that's out there, and this is not addressed. I will go over the text of the actual pardon and document that Donald Trump put out. The real scary thing, I think, is it doesn't prohibit DOJ from going after anyone else. It does say the indictments that currently exist should be kicked out, but it doesn't go after ongoing cases that are still out there. They just arrested a guy on Friday. So this is not done yet. Here's Donald Trump releasing the so-called hostages, also known as the J6ers.
I think this order will apply to approximately 1,500 people, sir.
So this is January 6th. These are the hostages. Approximately 1,500 for a pardon.
Yes.
Full pardon.
Full pardon or commutation?
Full pardon. We have about 6 commutations in there where we're doing further research. Okay. Nice to see you again. So this is a big one.
It is a big one. Let me just read out the pieces here. A proclamation. This proclamation ends the grave national injustice that has been perpetrated on the American people over the last 4 years and begins a process of national reconciliation. Acting pursuant to the granting authority, which is Article 2, Section 2 of the U.S. Constitution, I do hereby A, commute the sentences of the following individuals related to J6, and they are as follows: Stuart Rhodes, Kelly Meggs, Kenneth Harrelson, Thomas Caldwell, Jessica Watkins. These are the commutations. So they're still going to be, they've been released from jail, but they are not pardoned. Jessica Watkins, Roberto Minuta, Edward Vallejo, David Morshow, Joseph Hackett, Ethan Nordine, who we did interview, Joe Biggs, who we interviewed, Zach Reel interviewed, Dominic Pizzola had him on as well, and Jeremy Bertono. So those are the ones that just got released, but they still have criminal offenses on their record. They are no longer serving jail times. I saw a video that Stuart Rhodes was actually let out last night. I assume the rest are as well, or at least in short order. There's a little bit of controversy on this, which I'll play you in just a second. And then the second piece, part B, this applies to basically everybody, to include friends like Steve Baker, to include the Sean Witzmans, the J.D. Riveras, the folks that have served all of their time already, and people that have not yet served their time. This is where it says, Part B, grant a full, complete, and unconditional pardon to all others convicted of offenses related to the events that occurred at or near the U.S. Capitol on January 6, 2021. The Attorney General shall administer and effectuate the immediate issuance of certificates of pardon to all the individuals described in this thing. Goes on to say that I direct the Attorney General, this is the key part for future cases, to pursue dismissal with prejudice to the government of all pending indictments against individuals for their conduct related to the events at or near the U.S. Capitol on January 6th. The Bureau of Prisons shall immediately, he says immediately, implement all instructions from the Department of Justice regarding this directive. What it doesn't say is the ongoing cases. So that needs to be addressed and probably needs to be something that follows on. That's okay. We'll handle these things. Like, the other problem is that not everybody was let out. And the reason they weren't let out is because what you see, Bureau of Prisons, as far as I know, the Bureau of Prisons does not administer or run the DC Metro Jail, which is atrocious and horrifically managed. Here are people outside of that jail last night trying to say, hey, when are the rest of these guys being let out? And the answer is, we don't know yet. And the cops are kind of not beholden to them. They don't seem like they're going to align with the sympathies of the folks that are standing in the crowd. This is a big mistake. This is a big problem. And it also tells you a lot about DC Metro jails. It tells you a lot about the DC municipal government. There's a big problem in our national capital. It is very lopsided and one-sided. Here's the footage from outside of it. This is courtesy of Alex Jones.
I'm giving you literally all I got. But no more are going to be released tonight, okay? And tomorrow is a brand new day. We'll see what tomorrow brings, okay? I'll probably be here with you, okay?
It's a violation. You don't release them
Violation of the law, right? No, I was told no more tonight.
No more tonight.
No more tonight, okay?
We trust you.
And tomorrow, I don't know.
Tomorrow, I don't know. He's wearing sergeant stripes. That makes him at least supervisory of some people there. And the words immediately are pretty clear. That, like I said, the only problem might be in the story about the Bureau of Prisons and them thinking that they have a little bit of wiggle room to not let them out. But if they have been pardoned, which is what that decreed, they should be allowed out immediately. It feels like an injustice. It felt like an injustice for a long time. But it's written down on paper, and when this was signed, immediately thereafter, especially once they've been notified, that seems like a real problem. All right, so that was CBS coverage. Again, this is CBS, their lead story, so we're going to move on to the next lead story. I guess before we do that, we could talk about some of the chaotic things. Look, the country is not going to be fixed immediately. I think even looking at the word immediately in an EO tells us it's not going to happen right as the pen is signed. Donald Trump cannot solve all the problems right away. So let's go ahead and just give you guys another reminder. You don't know what's coming in. They haven't sworn in the cabinet yet. They don't have access to the entire administration. So we'll go ahead and just give you a reminder to go ahead and make sure that you're prepared, whatever that looks like for you. If it includes emergency food, and it should, preparelikekyle.com is the website that we send you to. This is still the crunch time. The new administration is still being sworn in. They are doing their hearings right now. They are not in office. Only the two that we saw the other day. And as great as it is that we have Donald Trump sitting back there doing real work, the enemies of this country are still embedded in the government. They have time to stir up trouble, and it could mean all kinds of things. There are possibilities for weaknesses. And of course, all the people we let in, whether it be a cyber attack or an invasion, God forbid, nuclear strikes, we have to make sure that we are prepared. You guys should do that as well with emergency food from My Patriot Supply. At this moment, they're offering $100 off. They have the 3-month emergency food kit. That's the one that I have 2 of. I recommend it. It's got 2,000 calories per day. It'll last you for 3 months. It's the best price that I saw in the dollars per calorie sort of ratio. Okay, it's the most affordable thing. It's plenty to get you through a prolonged emergency. Their food lasts for up to 25 years. It comes in these stackable bins, buckets that you can stack up in your closet like we do. Again, it's preparelikekyle.com to order the 3-month emergency food kit. It's preparelikekyle.com. Not hard to remember. It'll get you right there. You don't need any promo codes at all. It's the one that we have. Again, if you guys haven't done something, I don't think we're out of the woods with a lot of this stuff. And the media coverage of it is a part of it. Now, one of the issues that we've been seeing is that we let a bunch of people in, right? So this was another focus that Donald Trump had. This is very, very upsetting. This is NBC's lead story. Trump issues a slew of immigration-related executive orders on the first day of the new term. The orders include declaring a national emergency to deploy military personnel to the border, suspending refugee resettlement, ending birthright citizenship. These are going to be challenged all throughout the courts, as you'd expect. I would like to see Donald Trump just run roughshod over these until the only court that is mentioned in the Constitution is, in fact, weighing in on it. Wouldn't that be nice? I know the left would do that if they thought of it. I do not want to see a federal judge in some small jurisdiction that doesn't have the ability to restrict the movements of the chief executive of this office. I don't want to see those people doing it. And here's a little example of how we know factually, without any shred of doubt, that this could have been solved under Joe Biden's time. It could have been fixed. It was a voluntary choice. It was a decision that was made. This video is being listed as being 1 hour in El Paso after Donald Trump is sworn in. I know for a fact that they had people basically chomping at the bit to do their job. If you are listening to this, what you are missing out on seeing, the other ones were pretty obvious. You saw people like it was Donald Trump sitting at a desk and signing paperwork. This is actually something that I'm going to describe to you. There were about 24 police officers wearing riot gear and holding plastic shields that are set up for riots. They are creating a human wall across a bridge. It might be the bridge that is the footbridge into the United States, Bridge of the Americas. I can't tell from the footage, but that's what it looks like. There is a line of cones and some Jersey barriers, and there is a loudspeaker that is going to give you the following message. Imagine this if you walk up to America thinking you're about to break in, and this is the first thing you encounter. It's a very different animal starting yesterday, just after noon Eastern time. So that was still in the morning here in Texas.
Beyond this point will result in the arrest, prosecution, and possible application of force. Advertencia. Esta es una área restringida federal, fuera de los límites del personal no autorizado. La entrada o el movimiento no autorizado más allá de este punto dará lugar a la detención, al procesamiento y la aplicación posible de la fuerza.
Yeah, if you don't want to deal with the application of force and these people look like they're ready to get it done, get the hell out. What a change. Big time. Again, NBC, very upset. There's a slew of immigration-related executive orders. They go into the fact that this is unconstitutional and that there was a 1898 case that affirmed that birthright citizenship is legit. It was a Chinese guy back then, and so this is a problem because Chinese parents came here. The issue is and the argument is on the side of those who think that birthright citizenship does not mean people who came here and dropped an anchor baby, as we call them, a baby that has parents that have no legal right or status in the United States. The issue is how it was written. And the top line problem, I have to imagine, is that when the 14th Amendment was written, there was no welfare state. You came here, it didn't really matter if you came here without some sort of legal citizenship status. Yeah, you couldn't vote, but they didn't imagine this being something that you could just jump on the public dole and find yourself paid for medical, food, rent, that you'd have access to working jobs that would also be able to pay you under the table so you could avoid taxes. There's a lot of things that are problematic between 1898 and 2025 America. And using that same language, I want to see what the originals have to say. And it should be decided. And if it needs to be, I think they should propose a clear and clean amendment so that this language is fixed. It's probably not the best to do it underneath the Supreme Court, but they might as well start there and start pushing it forward. So Donald Trump firing the first shots in this little piece, and let it be more. Now, you'd be shocked to find out the folks over at NPR are horrified. They're terrified. Migrants are left in despair at the border as asylum system shuts down. The CBP One app has already been shut down. That's amazing. I wonder what sort of data can be exploited off said app and how many people are using it or were using it. Can we track them? Seems like we might be able to. I guarantee that was in the terms of service. So, the Customs and Border Patrol folks, the DHS mechanism that sent out all this could be used in a reverse to start mass deportations. I think it should be done only because there are a lot of people that came to this country the right way. And over the last 4 years, we have seen some absolutely wild, just flagrant violations of what our federal law says, abusing definitions like the word asylum. Do you remember how fast we've moved this? My mother-in-law has a bleeding heart, and I don't hate her for this at all. She's a very nice woman. And she cares about people. She wants to do the right thing. And she was using the word asylum seekers when people were coming in. And it's like, that's not what these people are. They are not asylum seekers. Asylum seekers have to be persecuted by governments. I remember asylum seekers. I know she does too. And I know that you do. Do you remember we'd see like a Russian MiG-28 pilot and he would touch down at like Andrews Air Force Base? And you'd go, oh my God, the Russians just landed, and he would immediately jump out and he would be asking on the radio, claiming asylum, which is to say that after he defected to the United States, if he were sent back to the Soviet Union, if he was sent back to Mother Russia, he would be thrown in jail. He would be persecuted for what he tried to do. There is a real thing called asylum, which is to say that there is a mechanism of their actual government, a tyrannical piece that is coming for the individual who is claiming asylum. Not like my husband back in El Salvador beat me and now I want to be here in the United States, or I didn't have a job when I lived in Venezuela, so I came here, or I just got out of prison in some Latin American country and I'd rather be in the United States, not in prison. This is not asylum. And the idea that they've now moved on to the term migrant, notice in this one headline from NPR, migrant and asylum is used. Well, migrants, by definition, are people who came here for economic reasons. They came here to work. And we actually do have a guest worker program. And you can come in and apply to that if you were on the list and you're vetted. And then you have to leave. And you can even take all your money with you. In fact, the people who come in under the migrant system oftentimes are housed, they are clothed, they are fed by the people that bring them in because that's part of the deal. They take them in, they have them work for a season, whatever that migrant season is. You know, like migratory birds, they fly in for the summer and they fly out at winter. It's the same animal. The word comes from the same thing. It means that they come here temporarily. Well, you're not a migrant if you come here permanently to leave your babies and to live in our country without any legal status. And it's not good for them. Let me be really clear on this stuff because we're going to have to make some arguments that appeal to the heart on the left. And I can tell you as a former law enforcement officer very clearly that people who come here without the legal status, the people that break our immigration laws and sneak into this country, they do not have a good go of it. They are a captive victim population because they oftentimes at least don't speak the language. They oftentimes don't understand our traditions, our customs, or our legal process. And they live in constant terror of being exploited by law enforcement and sent home, which is what they should be doing. And because they are going to hide from law enforcement, and because they don't have the ability to speak the language, and because they don't know what the laws and the rules are in this country, because they didn't come here and go through a citizenship test, they didn't get any kind of training, those people can be exploited, and they are, by corporations. That would be something the left would hate. They also get exploited by organized crime regularly. They are killed and extorted at a very high rate. Because there are predators among those people that are asylum seekers. They use the exact same labels. They use the exact same pathways. They come in with the exact same coyotes, except they are here to steal and exploit and to rape and pillage, sometimes Americans, but oftentimes people who speak their own language and look like them. They hang out in horrible apartment buildings and nasty little neighborhoods where they are watching for people like me, for folks who worked in the law enforcement community that are going to come in and try to bring like American civility. And they resist it, and they extort them for small amounts of money, which equals big, big cash. A lot of it is sent back home. I watched this with MS-13. I guarantee you the Tres de Agua guys are doing the same thing. They know that they can exploit people that have no legal status because those people do not go to regular American law enforcement. They think that they will be deported. Oftentimes they won't, by the way. In fact, some of them will, if they turn on the folks that are doing organized crime in this country, a lot of times they'll actually get, they'll get some benefits with ICE. Or DHS. I don't necessarily think that's right, but that's how it works. That's the real world system. If you do not want people to be a captive victim population, exploited like serfs and slaves, then you should not want illegal immigration. Imagine every single moment looking over your shoulder. It's like driving without registration or without having a license plate on. Imagine if you don't have a license plate on your car and you're driving around. You're just waiting to get pulled over and find out what that cop's going to have in store. Will it be a warning? Maybe. Is it going to be jail time? I don't know. Probably not. right? And you're probably not going to get jail time for not having it, but you just don't know what's going to go on. What other stuff's going on? These people have a blade, the sword of Damocles, just hanging over their head with one little strand, ready to break. And so they will not go out there. And that means that their children get raped, and sometimes their husbands or their wives get murdered, and they all get extorted. It's truly a terrible way to live. And the people who are bringing this stuff in, it's the drug cartels. They started off as drug traffickers, right? Narco traffickers, but they'll move people, they'll move weapons, they'll move anything that is referred to as contraband. When I remember my Quantico instruction, the constitutional law professor who was teaching us, who was a lawyer, and a pretty funny one is that, he was a longtime FBI agent, he was a big talker, and he always got really excited about the word contraband. What is contraband? He would always make us say the same definition. Contraband, the government's property. Things that you're not allowed to own, but the government is. It's kind of troubling, but that's what cartels deal in. And Donald Trump took another swing at them. So forget what NPR says, the migrants who are left in a desperate situation at the border because they were actually going to enforce immigration laws. And I want you to consider this executive order on the cartels. This one is a real big change. And it happened the first day in office. This is not the same Trump administration that people thought. If he continues at this pace, this country is going to be wild for the next, let's call it 12 months. Here he is talking about declaring cartels FTOs, which brings an entire raft of capabilities. Foreign terrorist organizations. I'm showing you at the desk. Here it is. Donald Trump sitting at the in the Oval Office signing.
This is actually an executive order designating the cartels and other organizations to be foreign terrorist organizations.
That's a big one.
Yes, sir.
People have wanted to do this for years. So they are now designated as terrorist organizations, foreign, and Mexico probably doesn't want that, but we have to do what's right. They're killing our people. They're killing 250, 300,000 American people a year, not 100, like has been reported for 15 years. It's probably 300,000.
Okay. Speaking of that, if you guys want to defend yourself, check out my friends over at Shield Arms. I'm going to go see them at SHOT Show. I'm going to be flying out tonight. Actually, we'll be doing our first show from the road tomorrow morning with a real hero, FBI agent who stood up against it. He also happens to own a rifle company, which is pretty cool. If you guys want to check out my friends at Shield Arms, go to shieldarms.com. The promo code KYLE will save you 5% across the site right now. Again, shieldarms.com. They just released a video, which I'll have to go ahead and pull down pretty soon. They are making a new fire control system, interchangeable modular grips, and sort of a Glock clone, if you will, that uses their magazines, which have much higher capacity than the factory Glock mag. So you're looking for the same kind of reliability. I'm really looking forward to getting my hands on this thing. It may be my new daily carry. Again, it's shieldarms.com. They're making a Glock with both the polymer, like you're used to seeing, a polymer grip, which is going to be the sort of the frame. They're also doing it with milled aluminum, which is like something that those of us who like a 1911 and like a real hand grip, maybe a nice SIG, that kind of thing, they've just put this thing out. So they just announced this. It's going to be at SHOT Show. I'll have some pictures and hopefully some hands-on. Again, shieldarms.com, promo code Kyle if you guys want to go out there and get yourself set up. I have 2 new weapons from them that I've got to show some videos to. I need some time, and I need the weather to be agreeable. We'll go out there and get it looked at. Okay, the foreign terrorist organization thing, that's a real big deal because it brings along something else. Here's Peter Doocy asking the question that we all want to know. Should 7th Group Special Forces have a huge war boner right now? Yes, I said that. Here, listen. This is what I mean.
President Trump, if the cartels are now going to be seen as foreign terror organizations, would you think about ordering U.S. Special Forces into Mexico to take them out?
Could happen. Stranger things have happened.
Stranger things have happened. He's sitting there at the Resolute desk stacked up with executive orders, just kind of winking and nodding, saying, hey, maybe we're going to let some of these guys go off the chain. If you guys are not familiar with the American Special Forces, when you hear the word Special Forces, it actually means something. It's like a brand name. It's the Army's Special Operations Troops. Everybody has their own version of it, right? Special Warfare, that's on the Navy side. Special Forces is the Army's version of it. Special Tactics, that's the Air Force version of it, right? So everybody kind of has their own little brand. And you're thinking of SEALs, and you're thinking of PJs, and you're thinking of combat controllers, and you're thinking of SF, Green Berets, that, Special Forces, Green Beret, interchangeable. They all have an area of specialty. One of the reasons why Special Forces is so neat is that they compartmentalize, and each of what are called groups have a specific area of operations around the world where they learn language and culture and tradition and are able to go in indigenous. And you can imagine that 7th, which handles Latin America, and that would theoretically include like places where a lot of the narco trafficking is going on, those guys are probably pretty amped up. So when I say the word war boner, if I posted it online, you guys saw a couple of people last night, you'll see some GBs, even old retired Green Berets from 7th Group are like, oh yeah, it's on. In the same way that people got excited about seeing things in Eastern Europe potentially kicking off. Because look, if this is your profession, if your profession is that of arms, where you're supposed to be bringing it hard to the people that need it, it's not very common that we have that kind of stuff going on the ground. They mostly do a thing called foreign internal defense. And FID missions basically means you go in and you train in like special forces teams in those areas. And then maybe they do or do not involve in kinetics, and you're kind of like a combat advisory. Having them declared an FTO, saying that entities within another country are a legitimate terrorist organization, it opens up a whole suite of trouble for the bad guys. Very interesting. We're going to have to keep an eye on that. I don't know what else you do with it, but let's talk about the thing that is also a lead story. I'm telling you, this was at CNN. This is like one of their top lead stories, but it wasn't the top. The top was that Trump lied. Go figure. And then they also are covering this hard-hitting news story. Did they cover 7th Group? Did they cover FTOs? Did they cover J6ers at the lead? No. This is legitimately a lead story over at CNN. Again, if you want to keep losing, I'm not going to get in your way. Donald Trump two-gender edict will upend the X identity on passports. This is not a joke, people. This is not a drill. This is a real headline coming from a real story written by someone called Tammy Luby and released at midnight. The federal government will only recognize 2 sexes, male and female, under executive orders that Donald Trump signed on Monday. The order reverses the efforts by the Biden administration to broaden gender identity designations, including those on U.S. passports. As of today, it will henceforth be the official policy of the United States government that there are only 2 genders, male and female, Donald Trump said during his inaugural address. Fact check, obviously. Can you imagine how much their heads are exploding? In fact, I actually have some video that was taped in San Francisco, California. This was women and gender-confused humans and otherwise loony lefties who were expressing their distaste at some of the movements in the early days of the early hours, let's say, of the Donald Trump regime coming back into power. This is people standing at a lookout that looks out over the San Francisco Bay. It's a beautiful place. It's a nice place to go out there and see. It's an incredible skyline. You're up over the top of the city. You're up in the headlands. I can't tell if this is on the Marin side or if it's on the south side of the peninsula. I can't remember, but I'm pretty sure that the Golden Gate Bridge is off to the left. My geography from what I'm seeing right now is hard. But what I do know is these people are very upset. So San Francisco is going to San Francisco. Here's what it sounds like. They're going to do a countdown, so they're in sync. They're very, very upset. Only 2 genders. Seriously, how dare he? This is a real thing. This is how goofy we are right now. They can't help it. Keep doing this, please, folks. Continue. It's my favorite. You're going to keep winning. All right, let's go on to some of the wild stuff that happened at the Biden end of things, right? This ended at noon, just before the stroke of noon. Joe Biden, our former president, who I have a very interesting video of, being very weird, he said the following statement from President Joe Biden. I'm issuing pardons for Gerald Lundergan and Ernest Cromartie. I'm also commuting the life sentence imposed on Leonard Peltier. What's his name? Peltier. It's hard for me to pronounce that. It's a French name. He's an Indian. I'm going to show you that in 1 second. Who will serve the remainder of his sentence in home confinement. He went on to say that he's exercising his powers under the Constitution to pardon James B. Biden, Sarah Jones Biden, Valerie Biden Owens, John T. Owens, and Francis W. Biden. The issuance of these pardons should not be mistaken as an acknowledgement that they engaged in any kind of wrongdoing, nor should acceptance be misconstrued as an admission of guilt for any offense. Is that a real thing? Doesn't it kind of mean that you're guilty? Isn't that the whole point that the left was out there putting out? It seems like CNN's going to have a hard time with this. Here's Anderson Cooper, Chris Cuomo, Rachel Maddow over at MSNBC, and Don Lemon, who still had things to say about this. This is them talking about, you'd think it would be about Biden. This was actually them yelling about Donald Trump potentially pardoning his family, which he didn't have to do. It turns out Joe Biden did the thing that they thought Trump would do. As usual, they own themselves. Here we go.
Is that a thing? Preemptive blanket pardons? I mean, I haven't heard about this since like Monopoly with a get out of jail free card.
Trump has discussed with advisors whether to grant preemptive pardons. What does that say? That he wants to excuse them for things before anybody's even saying there's an investigation.
President Trump, as he winds down his last few weeks in office, is considering preemptive pardons. What a mess. More as we know.
Source saying that some of the president's inner circle, well, they're telling him that it would be perfectly fine to pardon his family and other associates preemptively, even though they haven't been charged with any crimes. How much damage could be done to this country can he do to this country on his way out?
Is that a thing? Preemptive?
Yeah, it's a thing. It just got done. And again, this is what it looks like. This is his statement. It's obviously got some letterhead that is associated with it, but let's focus on the front and the top of it for just 1 second, because in an award-winning move, and I mean this is like the dumbest thing possible. I teased this out on social media before we got started. This guy, whose name is Leonard Peltier. That's what he looks like. He's kind of like an Indian version of Ron Jeremy. This is the NBC headline. No exaggeration. Biden commutes life sentence of Leonard Peltier, Native American activist, imprisoned for almost 50 years. Well, how dare anybody imprison a Native American activist? Oh, well, because ABC actually got it right. Again, ABC for the win. ×2. They said accurately that Donald Trump did not put his hand on a Bible. They were correct about this. They also accurately reported that Biden sparks outrage with a last-minute commutation of a man convicted of killing 2 FBI agents in the 1970s. So he's a convicted murderer, but he's also just an activist. How hard is it for people on the political left at this very moment in time? Because the FBI used to be the man, right? And you damn the man, save the empire. They had this sort of like, push back against it. But of late, January 6th, late 2021, the FBI has been doing the God-fearing work of the hard left and doing these political investigations. They set up 3 full squads over at Gallery Place, and they've been sending out leads to arrest 1,600 plus Donald Trump supporters and scare the hell out of people who may have crossed a line that they couldn't even see because the line was gone by the time they showed up. How many thousands of people slept every night wondering if the FBI was kicking in their door at 0600? I'll put my hand up. I was one of them. Not because of January 6th, but because I didn't trust the FBI. What a weird moment in time where the political left simultaneously hates the FBI from the past, but loves the FBI of the current and can't see the difference between the two of them. Biden commutes the life sentence of a Native American activist who was imprisoned for almost 50 years. Never mind the fact, and then here's the thing. He was convicted, and we have to have rule of law. But the subtitle underneath here, which you're missing, the commutation will allow Peltier, who's maintained his innocence in the killing of 2 FBI agents, to spend his remaining days in home confinement. Well, if he says he's innocent, I'm sure no one's ever been guilty of that. Look, either you got convicted or you didn't. This is one of those awful things. I think it was 1973, although the year could be wrong here. I may have to go looking for it. It's referred to as second wounded knee. It says 1975 was the conviction. For some reason, I think the year of 1973 was where it actually happened. This was at the Pine Ridge Reservation in South Dakota. This is a famous FBI story. As we start digging into the history of it, this is one of those things. If you have ever worked Indian crimes, and I have, as Steve Friend has, the people who've worked Indian crimes are a unique breed of FBI agent. They're out there working on major crimes, physical assaults, sexual assaults, homicides. They do death investigations. We're doing the thing that you thought FBI agents actually did. It's not like Wind River, folks. It's a lot sadder than that. It's the federal government coming in for a absolutely incapable force, which is mostly how Indian reservations are run. And I'm using the word Indian because that's how it's used in the federal law. It's Indian law. It's federal Indian recognized tribes and so on. In any case, these pardons and all the sort of talk about it, it absolutely destroys any argument that the political left could have about what Donald Trump's going to do. I did the numbers, and here, look, I pulled it from AI, so we're going to just have to like trust that they're right, but I think they are. It said George W. Bush between 2001 and 2009 issued 200 pardons. Barack Obama did almost 2,000, 1,927 pardons in his 8 years in office. Donald Trump, in his first 4 years, did 237, closer in line with George Bush, but more. Do you want to guess right now? I'll put my chat friends on the board here. Do you guys want to guess how many Joe Biden issued? He was president from 2021 to 2025, 4 years. Joe Biden issued, are you ready for this? Per Google's AI, 8,064. He was in office for half the time of Barack Obama and did 4 times as many. That's incredible. 8,064 pardons were issued. That was as of yesterday when I checked it. What an insanely wild thing to do. So when you start telling me who Trump can and can't pardon and the standards and the norms and the dignity of the office, you can straight piss off. 8,064 pardons. That is a truly ugly and wild flouting. And 1,600 people were locked up over basically a glorified trespassing misdemeanor that should have never been brought in the first place. Here's Caitlin Collins, the smug sort of 30-something, talking to Cory Booker, formerly known as I Am Spartacus, New Jersey senator, talking about, did they just destroy their ability to critique Donald Trump? They kind of know it, don't they?
On that point, I want to get you to respond to this, because what I'm already hearing from people who work for Trump and are his allies is that there's really no leg for the Democrats don't have a leg to stand on, because President Biden leaving today, issued a raft of pardons, including for his own family members and his sister and his brothers and their spouses, and then also for an activist, an elderly activist who is convicted of killing 2 FBI agents. Chris Wray did not even want him to commute that sentence that President Biden did today. They say that doesn't give Democrats an argument here to criticize these pardons. What is your response to that?
I mean, I think that's the mistake we're seeing now, is people trying to reduce this to tribalism. This is not about Democrat or Republican. Joe Biden pardoned a lot of people. Yeah, he should answer for that and explain what he did and his reasoning. But the people he pardoned, his family members, did not, before the naked public eye, beat police officers, try to overthrow our government, lead to the death of police officers, and have injuries, scars, both visible and invisible, on police officers that are still affecting their lives today.
No, you're right. That's totally true. That's totally correct. And then that one guy who just killed like 2 people, right? He also let out some cop killers that were in Virginia the other day. No further information on this. Pretty incredible. It's going to be really hard for them to do anything about this, and I mean it. Let's do a couple other little kind of hits. These are some high points. The memorandum to resolve the backlog of security clearances for the executive office of the president's personnel. This is Donald Trump granting the White House the ability to do something that's very common, by the way, and the FBI is able to do it. It's called granting an interim clearance. It means thanks for slowing things down. The FBI actually in the security division, which normally does the background check, there's a whole group that's called the Spin Squad. The Spin Squad, I don't remember what it stands for, but they're a bunch of agents that go out there and they do background investigations and they take their mother effing time. I just cannot tell you how little they feel in the sense of urgency. If you get 2 interviews done a day, just imagine this. If you do 2 interviews a day and write them up, that's a full day. That's a $175,000 a year FBI agent job. It's almost always people who are on the edge of retirement. They're what we call KMA agents, which means they're 20 plus years in. They could retire whenever they want. And KMA stands for Kiss My Ass. The KMA agents are the ones who, generally speaking, go to the Spin Squad. Or if you have like some other problems, let's say like one of my buddies was there like by no fault of his own. He tried out for a CIA program. He got jammed up on the polygraph because he had family members that were still in China. He was a good dude, like a solidly good human being. And they put him on the Spin Squad. So what did he do? He worked out in the morning. He went and did an interview. He came back and had lunch. He did another workout. He went and did another interview. And then he went home. That's what you did. $175,000 a year, GS 1310 salary in DC. maxed out. That's what they do. And they take their time. How many people are you going to be able to do? A background investigation for one individual might have dozens of references on their SF-86. Dozens. So they're going to send people out onesie twosie. Yeah, it's going to take forever. They were 2 years in still getting these background checks done. 4 years in, not even finished on the first Trump term. I guarantee you there were still some outstanding clearances that had not been resolved yet by the FBI. So they just solved this problem and said, look, folks, interim clearances are the way of the day. And the second thing about clearances, which is very interesting and I think is going to be relevant, holding former government officials accountable for election interference and improper disclosure of sensitive governmental information. This is the 51 spies who lies. They took away their clearances, and also John Bolton's for no reason, because screw John Bolton too. It's full bore. It's pedal to the metal. Don't stop. Everything's going in. I expect a couple other few things here. I'd like to see more of this. I'd like to see it all front loaded. I don't have a lot of expectations that that's the case, but I'm just telling you, the first, let's call it 12 hours of the Trump presidency have already defied some of the expectations we have. So let's keep it up. Let's go. Somebody told me they've actually maxed out their yearly usage of that phrase, let's go, in one day. And I've got another great example of it. How about J.D. Vance? He had some interesting ideas on the campaign trail. Let's go to this one.
I read this story the other day that really bothers me. And the basic idea of it is that the Biden administration, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, is actually spying on lawful gun owners in the country. They're keeping a database of people who have bought firearms lawfully in the past few weeks. And I actually bought a new rifle in the past 3 weeks. So I guess, based on the terms of this story, I'm now in the Biden administration's secret database. So I'm going to say the third thing I'm going to do, I'm going to first of all end that illegal database because they cannot collect information unconstitutionally on American citizens. I'm going to investigate who decided to collect information on American citizens in the first place, because we all know where this is going. If we allow this database to exist, that is eventually going to become an unconstitutional gun registry in this country. It's going to eventually lead to the Biden administration destroying people's Second Amendment rights, and I'm not going to stand for it. We need to stop that. We need to investigate who did it. And the third thing we need to do, we need to just abolish the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms in the first place. Why does it exist if it's not preventing the gun running on the southern border by the drug cartels?
Let's go. Let's get rid of the ATF. He said it before. I've had this clip for a long time. Let's do it. I don't need an ATF, and neither do you. The stuff that they do can be handled by a treasury account. If you want to collect taxes, just get rid of the National Firearms Act in 1934. There's no reason we should have this problem. Let's get rid of the Hughes Amendment. Let's get after it. Americans should be able to own machine guns. You know why? Because a bunch of illegal idiots already have them in Chicago. We've seen it. We just did a story on it the other day talking about how the switches are getting brought in by the people in China, right? Let's just open it up. Machine guns are not a problem for people who are not using them illegally. And if you use a tool illegally, you can already do a lot of damage. Get rid of them. It's a fantastic idea. And if there's good investigators, and I'm sure there are some decent ATF agents, I know a couple of them, to be fair. They're not bad people. Move them into the other investigative agencies. I don't know where that's going to be. Let's do it. Usually we do a little palate cleanse here. The palate cleanse is often like a comedy bit or a song or something. Today, the palate cleanse is going to be the reaction of Scott Jennings sitting on a panel of people who are gobsmacked by what Donald Trump did. Here he does. He summed up the entirety of what we just said in our show. He does it in very short order. So we're going to go to Scott Jennings, who's been the voice of sanity, the only reason why you're going to find anything reasonable over on CNN at this point. He is the voice of reason. And then after this program, I encourage you guys to stick around. If you're on Rumble, you're going to get moved directly into the American Radicals podcast. If you're watching over on X, it's at AMRADPOD, AMRADPOD. If you're listening after the fact, you should follow the American Radicals podcast, my buddy Steve Friend, Garrett O'Boyle, for their hot takes. Here comes Mr. Jennings, laying it out there for people whose mouths are on the floor.
Well, watching Donald Trump's day today, I'm just struck by the fact that we have a president again. I mean, look at this guy's day. 3 speeches, 196 executive actions, holds a 90-minute press conference narrating each one as he goes along. I mean, Joe Biden could not and would not offer the kind of transparency or vigor to the American people that we got here on day one from Trump. And tonight, Trump's going to throw on a tux and go to 3 balls. I mean, he's having an active day. I think it's going to be a massive amount of contrast here for a presidency like what we're going to see out of Trump and versus what we've had out of Biden. I was watching Trump today, and Van and I were talking earlier today, watching him walk down the hall of the Capitol, and the words that came to mind to me were gritty resilient, determined, and audacious. There's not like a more perfect advertisement for the value of these qualities in modern America. I mean, you think about all the things that happened to him. Winning, losing, the court cases, nearly being assassinated. It's rather audacious what he has accomplished, winning this election and taking office today.
And he just pushed the envelope starting from day one. So let's see a lot more of that. I'm praying for Donald Trump. I hope you guys do as well. We're going to be flying out to Las Vegas. So we'll look forward to seeing our first show. It's going to be live with an FBI whistleblower, former FBI agent, and sitting toe-to-toe with my friend Joe Altman out in Las Vegas, Nevada for the SHOT Show. So follow social media if you guys want to see what we're doing out there. You'll see the show tomorrow morning at 0930. Make sure you've liked this one, share it, subscribe, and so on. God bless all of you. God bless Donald Trump. God bless this country as we enter this new phase, and stick around for the American Radicals podcast. We'll see you guys tomorrow.
Thanks for listening to The Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram at Kyle Seraphin.